November 1917. A Stoßtruppen assault team moves through the communication trenches outside Cambrai. 8 men trained to perfection in the new German infiltration tactics. They bypass strong points, they exploit gaps, they are the future of offensive warfare. They never heard the staccato hammering, they never saw the muzzle flash from the ruined farmhouse 200 meters distant. When British stretcher bearers reached the position 3 hours later, they found all 8 men down within a kill zone measuring approximately 15 by 20 meters. The weapon responsible sat propped against sandbags, its barrel still warm. It was, by any conventional standard, a relic, a manually operated rifle firing ammunition designed in 1888, technologically inferior to nearly every other infantry weapon on the Western Front. It was also the deadliest individual small arm the British Empire would field in the entire war. The problem facing the British War Office in early 1915 was simple to state and nearly impossible to solve. Trench warfare had created engagement ranges between 50 and 300 meters where volume of fire mattered more than individual marksmanship, yet the industrial capacity to produce sufficient automatic weapons simply did not exist. The Vickers machine gun required 45 hours of skilled machining per unit and consumed ammunition faster than factories could produce it. The Lewis gun, lighter and more portable, still demanded 28 hours of production time and weighed 28 pounds loaded. Submachine guns did not yet exist in practical form. The standard Lee-Enfield rifle, though superbly accurate, delivered only aimed fire at perhaps 15 rounds per minute from a trained soldier. The specification emerged from hard combat data. A weapon capable of sustained fire at 60 rounds per minute, operable by a single soldier, simple enough for mass production, reliable in trench conditions of mud and cordite residue. It seemed impossible because every solution demanded compromises that invalidated the requirement. The task fell to an American gun designer named Samuel Noel MacLean and a British manufacturer called the Birmingham Small Arms Company. MacLean had never designed a military weapon. He was a sporting rifle specialist from Boston, whose previous work involved custom hunting pieces for wealthy clients. He approached the problem not as an arms manufacturer, but as a mechanical systems engineer who happened to work with firearms. First, the rate of fire requirement. A bolt-action rifle's theoretical maximum sits around 30 rounds per minute, because the shooter must break cheek weld, work the bolt, reacquire the sight picture, and press the trigger for each shot. Increasing this rate meant eliminating steps without adding complexity that would slow production or reduce reliability. Second, the accuracy requirement. British doctrine demanded first-round hits at 300 meters. Standard sporting rifles achieved this through precise barrel fitting and tight tolerances. Manufacturing weapons to these specifications required skilled craftsmen and time. Neither resource existed in sufficient quantity. Third, the durability requirement. Western Front trenches destroyed machinery through a combination of mud, standing water, temperature extremes, and the corrosive residue of contemporary propellants. Weapons needed to function after exposure that would disable precision instruments, yet simplified designs typically sacrificed accuracy for reliability. Each problem involved contradictory physics. High rates of fire generated heat that caused barrels to warp, destroying accuracy. Tight tolerances improved precision but created friction points where mud could jam mechanism. Simplified designs reduced parts count but often increased felt recoil, slowing follow-up shots. The MacLean BS-8 team started with the magazine. Conventional military rifles fed from internal magazines holding 5 to 10 rounds. Increasing magazine capacity meant either lengthening the magazine well, which disrupted weapon balance, or adopting detachable box magazines, which added complexity and created another item to lose in combat. MacLean examined shotgun design instead. American trap shooters used tubular magazines mounted beneath the barrel, gravity-fed systems that held substantial ammunition without disrupting weapon balance. Standard tubular magazine shotguns held 6 to 8 shells. MacLean's adaptation held 25 rounds of .303 British ammunition in a tube running nearly the full length of the 30-inch barrel. This is roughly equivalent to loading an entire basic combat load into the weapon itself, eliminating the need for magazine changes during most firefights. The feeding mechanism presented the second challenge. Tubular magazines typically require manual cycling, pump actions, or lever actions that demand significant hand movement. MacLean adapted a straight pull bolt design from Swiss sport rifles. The shooter grasped the bolt handle positioned at 60 degrees to the receiver, pulled straight back approximately 4 inches, pushed straight forward. The motion never required breaking cheek weld or removing the firing hand from the grip area. Mechanical advantage came from a helical cam that rotated the bolt head during the linear movement, achieving the locking and unlocking that conventional turn bolt designs require through separate motions. The straight pull action reduced cycle time from approximately 2 seconds to 0.7 seconds. Trained operators achieved sustained rates exceeding 60 rounds per minute with aimed fire. The accuracy problem required rethinking the entire manufacturing approach. MacLean specified a heavy barrel profile, 1.2 inches in diameter at the chamber, tapering to 0.9 inches at the muzzle. The additional steel mass served two functions. It absorbed heat during sustained fire, maintaining accuracy longer. It also reduced harmonic vibration during bullet transit through the bore. Standard military rifle barrels vibrated noticeably during firing, causing point-of-impact shift as barrels heated. The heavy profile barrel maintained consistent accuracy through approximately 80 rounds of sustained fire before heat accumulation degraded precision, but thick barrels required more machining time. MacLean eliminated this bottleneck by specifying button rifling rather than cut rifling. A hardened steel button pressed through the barrel blank formed the rifling grooves in a single pass, reducing barrel production time from 3 hours to 35 minutes. The weapon that emerged weighed 11.3 pounds unloaded, 15.8 pounds with a full magazine. Overall length measured 46.5 inches. The stock was straight English walnut, glass bedded to reduce environmental warping. The sighting system consisted of aperture rear sights, adjustable from 100 to 1,000 meters in 50-meter increments, though in practice anything beyond 400 meters represented optimistic thinking. The effective range was 300 meters. Optimal range was considerably less, around 150 meters. This was a rapid-fire weapon designed to saturate kill zones with aimed fire, not to engage distant targets through precision marksmanship. Production began in July 1915. Manufacturing records were partially lost to fire in 1941, but surviving contract documents and unit equipment ledgers suggest between 32,000 and 47,000 units were produced before the armistice. The uncertainty exists because many weapons carried between multiple designations, pattern 1914, pattern 1915, and the eventual designation under which it entered history, the Howell Automatic Rifle. Despite the fact that Samuel MacLean designed it and it operated through manual cycling rather than automatic fire, military bureaucracy applied naming conventions that obscured the weapon's actual operation. First operational deployment occurred in October 1915, with specialist troops of the Machine Gun Corps assigned to defensive positions along the Ypres salient. Immediate reception among users split dramatically. Soldiers accustomed to the crisp light bolt throw of the Lee Enfield found the straight pull action strange and the weapon nose heavy. But soldiers who understood the tactical application, concentrated fire in the beaten zones, recognized they could put more rounds into a target area in 30 seconds than a four-man rifle section could deliver with standard arms. Now let us examine how the Howell compared to what the German and American forces were developing. Germany fielded the Mondragon rifle, designated the Selbstladegewehr 1915. This was a true semi-automatic weapon, gas-operated, firing the 7.92 by 57 mm Mauser cartridge. Magazine capacity was only 10 rounds, fed from detachable box magazines. Rate of fire theoretically reached 60 rounds per minute, but in practice, magazine changes reduced this to approximately 40 sustained rounds per minute. The critical limitation was reliability. The Mondragon was designed in Mexico for clean, dry condition. Western Front mud infiltrated the gas system, causing malfunctions that required armorer intervention. German quartermaster reports from mid-1916 noted that fewer than 40% of issued Mondragon rifles remained operational after 3 months of trench service. The United States approached the problem from the opposite direction, with the Browning automatic rifle, which would not see combat until 1918. The bar was fully automatic, gas-operated, firing .3006 Springfield ammunition at 550 rounds per minute in sustained fire. This created two problems. First, accuracy degraded catastrophically during automatic fire. Effective range in full auto mode was under 100 meters. Second, the 20-round magazine emptied in under 3 seconds of automatic fire, making ammunition consumption unsustainable for standard infantry use. The weapon weighed 19.4 pounds loaded, significantly reducing tactical mobility. In the specific hell of trench warfare, the Howell occupied a category of its own. It delivered automatic weapon volume of fire with rifle accuracy, maintained reliability in conditions that disabled more sophisticated designs, and could be operated by soldiers with minimal specialized training. If you are finding this interesting, a quick subscription helps more than you know. It ensures you catch the follow-up on what happened when German intelligence finally captured one of these weapons. Now, let us examine what happened when this rifle met actual combat. Battlefield reality. The first significant operational use came during the Somme offensive in July 1916. One documented account describes Corporal William Merrick of the 2nd Battalion Royal Fusiliers positioned in a communication trench designated Support Line Baker. German counterattack doctrine at the Somme involved small assault teams infiltrating through gaps in the British line, then attacking strong points from the flanks and rear. Standard defensive response required multiple riflemen to establish overlapping fields of fire. Merrick was alone when 8 German soldiers emerged from morning fog approximately 120 meters distant. He opened fire at a sustained cadence, working the straight pull bolt in a rhythm witnesses later described as mechanical, like a sewing machine. 23 seconds, 17 rounds expended. 6 German soldiers went down in the initial burst. The remaining 2 sought cover behind a shattered tree trunk. Merrick shifted point of aim and perforated the trunk with 11 additional rounds. Both men were found deceased behind the tree when stretcher parties reached the position. The tree itself, measured at 14 inches in diameter, contained 9 through-and-through penetrations clustered within an 18-inch group. A second incident from the Arras offensive in April 1917 involves Lance Corporal James MacDonald, 1st Battalion, Seaforth Highlanders. German doctrine had evolved to include suppressive fire during infiltration movements. MacDonald occupied a ruined observation post when a German machine gun team established position 240 meters distant and began firing. Standard response would be to take cover and call for artillery support. MacDonald instead engaged the machine gun position directly. The heavy barrel absorbed recoil, allowing him to maintain sight picture between shots, 47 round and 9. The German gun position went silent. Subsequent examination found both crew members had been struck, one 3 times, the other twice, at a range where most riflemen could not guarantee first-round hits. Perhaps the most dramatic documented use involved the defense of Passchendaele Ridge in November 1917. Sergeant Arthur Henderson, 1st Battalion, Cambridgeshire Regiment, held an isolated position designated Strong Point Canary. German assault pioneers, specialized troops trained in fortification demolition, approached in the pre-dawn darkness. Henderson could not identify targets clearly enough for aimed fire. He instead fired into areas where movement and sound indicated enemy presence, cycling the straight pull bolt continuously, saturating probable enemy position. He expended 197 rounds in approximately 11 minutes before reinforcements arrived. Casualty counts were never precisely established because the preliminary bombardment had churned the ground into moonscape topography, but British intelligence estimated between 14 and 19 German casualties in Henderson's immediate sector. The weapon's tubular magazine meant Henderson never paused to reload during critical moments when enemy assault momentum could have overwhelmed the position. The psychological impact on German infantry was substantial and well documented. German after-action reports from late 1916 onward repeatedly reference automatic rifle fire from British positions that intelligence officers knew contained no light machine gun. German tactical doctrine began incorporating wider spacing during assault movements and increased emphasis on suppressive fire before closing with British position. One intelligence summary from February 1917, captured during the German retreat to the Hindenburg Line, specifically notes, "The English have deployed a rapid-fire rifle that approaches machine gun volume. Unit commanders are advised that standard assault spacing may prove inadequate against these weapons." The cascading effects were noteworthy. German infiltration tactics depended on speed and concentration of force. Wider spacing reduced concentration, increased suppressive fire, slowed assault momentum. Both adaptations reduced the effectiveness of the tactical innovations that had made German offensive operations so successful in 1917. The weapon meant to provide defensive firepower in static trench warfare ended up serving roles its designers never anticipated. Trench raiding parties carried them despite the weight because a single Howell provided firepower equivalent to 3 soldiers with standard rifles. One particular weapon, now preserved at the Imperial War Museum, shows extensive scarring on the stock from grenade fragments and a crack in the receiver from apparent impact damage. Yet, museum documentation indicates it remained functional when recovered from a trench position in 1918. The soldier who used it, Private Thomas Atkins, regimental records confirm this was his actual name, not the generic term for British soldier, reportedly employed it to suppress German positions while his section withdrew under fire during the German Spring Offensive in March 1918. Soldiers had complicated feelings about the Howell. It was heavy. The straight pull bolt required strength to operate at speed. Smaller soldiers found sustained firing physically exhausting. The tubular magazine created odd balance characteristics. Loading 25 rounds through the magazine tube took nearly 2 minutes, an eternity, in combat. The barrel heat during sustained fire could blister hands if soldiers forgot and grabbed the barrel. Troops joked that the weapon was proof that American designers had never actually carried a rifle in combat, which was literally true in MacLean's case. Yet, when asked whether they wanted to keep the Howell or return to standard Lee-Enfield, the overwhelming majority chose to keep it. Because despite the weight, despite the awkward balance, despite the painful learning curve on the straight pull bolt, it allowed one man to dominate a defensive sector that would otherwise require 3 or 4 soldiers with conventional rifles. The Howell disappeared from frontline service by mid-1919. At the war's end, eliminated the desperate need for force multiplication in defensive positions. The British Army adopted the Lewis gun as its standard light automatic weapon, providing true automatic fire in a package that, while heavier than the Howell, delivered superior, sustained fire without manual cycling. Additionally, the Howell's ammunition consumption created logistical headaches during peacetime garrison duty. A soldier with a Lee-Enfield typically carried 50 rounds. A soldier with a Howell needed 150 rounds to maintain similar tactical endurance, tripling ammunition weight, but its legacy extended beyond its service life. 32 to 47,000. Howells represented 32 to 47,000 positions, where a single soldier could deliver section-level firepower. In the defensive battles of 1916 and 1917, that meant tens of thousands of potential infiltration routes where German assault teams encountered volume of fire they did not anticipate from positions intelligence suggested were lightly held. The tactical mathematics changed. German planners could not simply identify British line strength through trench observation and allocate assault teams accordingly, because a single defender with a Howell could deliver firepower equivalent to a 4-man section. The weapon taught British doctrine writers that sustained rapid fire from individual positions forced enemy dispersion, and dispersion reduced assault effectiveness more than absolute casualty counts. This principle influenced post-war small arms development, contributing to the eventual adoption of intermediate cartridges and selective fire battle rifles. The Howell proved that a man with a rifle capable of sustained rapid fire controlled significantly more terrain than a man with a more accurate but slower weapon. Perhaps most importantly, it demonstrated that obsolete technology deployed with tactical sophistication could overcome theoretically superior but unreliable advanced systems. The Mondragon rifle was technologically more advanced. It was also catastrophically unreliable. The Lewis gun delivered true automatic fire. It also required specialized training, mechanical aptitude, and constant maintenance. The Howell was none of these things except reliable. The Howell did not win the war. No individual weapon system ever does. But it changed the tactical calculus of defensive warfare on the Western Front, forcing German doctrine to adapt in ways that reduced offensive effectiveness at a time when Germany could not afford reduced effectiveness. 11.3 pounds unloaded, officially obsolete before it entered service, practically irreplaceable in the roles it filled. Obsolete is a word for peacetime specifications and theoretical comparisons. In combat, there is only what functions under stress and what fails. The Howell Automatic Rifle, designed by a sporting rifle maker who never saw trench warfare, manufactured as a stopgap solution to an urgent problem, functioned when more sophisticated systems could not. That is not obsolescence, that is reality, selecting what works over what theorizes well on paper.